Welcome into the 49ers Report. Chase Sr. here with you, coming at you from Phoenix, Arizona, as I'm on a bachelor party for one of my best friends, Eric Brown. If you want to send in a super thanks here on YouTube, if you're watching after the fact, for the Bachelor, EB Eric Brown, by hitting that heart icon with a $sign, I'll get the Bachelor a shot tonight, and I'll tell him it's from the Niner gang, and I'll be able to prove to him that the faithful a bunch of ride or dies. And in advance, really appreciate all of the support. And thanks to all of you for listening live here on the Callin app. We've been going live here once a week. So if you want to join our weekly live podcast where you have an opportunity to call into the show like a sports talk radio show and I can take your calls, make sure you download the app by going to chatsports.com/49erscallin and subscribe to the 49ers Report so you can be a part of the movement. Coming up on today's show, George Kittle on the Pat McAfee Show with some really telling comments about Trey Lance, which I think tells the full story about who Trey Lance is and what he can become as compared to all of the haters and the detractors who don't really realize and understand what Trey Lance can bring to the table, because unlike George Kittle, they're not in the building. But first, if you're watching after the fact right here on YouTube, I have a challenge for you watching right now. We had one person comment on a Chat Sports video 53 times, which is both hilarious and epic. I want to see if there's anybody in the faithful watching right now who can top that. I want to put you to the test. Can anybody top 53 comments individually? I'm putting you to the test in the comment section right now. And by the way, feel free to hop into the caller queue and I'll answer any of your questions in a few minutes for a Q&A right here on the 49ers Report on Callin. So with that, let's dive into the latest 49ers news and rumors. And we've heard former players and media types say a bunch of negative things about Trey Lance over the last couple of weeks and over the last couple of months. First, it was Matt Lombardo who reported that the 49ers are, quote, underwhelmed with Trey Lance. Chris Sims said the Niners are, quote, scared to play Lance and they lack confidence in him. A former player the other day said there are concerns about Trey Lance's arm fitness, a term that I have never heard before in my life. And that goes to show you that people are just reaching for all of these storylines, and those people are reaching for these storylines because they don't believe in Lance as a player. And we're at a point where people are just throwing darts and reaching for takes right now and getting a little bit too desperate, in my opinion. So I want to focus on what people in the building are actually saying about Lance. Those who are around him and have seen what he's capable of, as compared to those who are just on the outside looking in, reaching for all of these awful takes. And think about this. If you want to marry or date somebody and you're trying to find out more about that person, more about that individual to make sure you're making the right decision to spend the rest of your life with them or to hop into a long-term relationship, what are you going to do? You're going to reach out to those who are close to them, right? And you're not going to reach out to some high school friend who they don't communicate with and haven't talked to in 10 years. You want to get and gauge who that person is by reaching out to those people who are actually close to them and know them really well. Before we continue to unpack everything and get to what George Kittle had to say about Lance on the Pat McAfee Show, I want to ask you this question. By the end of the 2022 season, where do you think Trey Lance will rank among all starting quarterbacks in the National Football League? If you're listening here on Callin, get into the comments section. If you're watching on YouTube, predict it and scale it for me from 1 to 32 based on all 32 starting quarterbacks in the National Football League. As for what George Kittle had to say about Lance on the Pat McAfee Show, and keep in mind, Kittle is really close with Jimmy Garoppolo, and he loves Garoppolo. They're considered to be best friends. So for him to say these things about Lance and to speak glowingly of him, considering his relationship with Jimmy G, I think it's pretty telling. He said this to McAfee, quote, once this kid gets a lot of reps, just watch out, because some of the things I've seen him do in practice kind of boggle me. So I'm waiting for it. And you pair what George Kittle said about Trey Lance with what other people in the building, coaches as well as players, have said about Trey Lance. And by the way, those listening on Callin, Sam, Brett, Wet Noodle 187, Kareem, Jason, Draco Pimpin, appreciate all of you. Draco, I see you in the caller queue. I'll start answering some calls here in a few minutes. So you pair what George Kittle said about Lance with what other players who have seen Lance in practice and have played with him have also said. This coming from Fred Warner a little while ago. Going up against that kid every day in practice for sure made me a better player. I think of all the DBs, everybody on the defensive side of the football would say that as well. What did Jimmy Ward say back a couple months ago during the season? Yeah, man, Trey Lance gave us too good of a look sometimes. It's tough going up against Trey. Trent Williams, you see Trey Lance run the football. You see him throw the football. And you know that right there, that's a generational talent. Dre Greenlaw, Trey Lance has the best arm talent that I've ever seen, hands down. George Kittle, back a couple months ago as well. Trey Lance reminds me the most of Josh Allen. He's got a cannon for an arm. I think he has one of the highest ceilings that I've ever seen before. So we're doing a little deep dive investigative research right here. And the point of the exercise is to think back to what Chris Sims said about Trey Lance, that the Niners are scared to play him. Matt Lombardo saying that the coaching staff is underwhelmed by him. What others have said, the whole arm fitness type of comment from that former Denver Bronco. They're not in the building with Lance. They don't see what he's been able to do and what he's capable of on a daily basis. They're basing their comments off of 2 starts. And within those 2 starts, look, we saw Lance have somewhat of an up and down rocky 2 outings as a starting quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But we also saw the talent that he possesses within those first 2 starts against the Arizona Cardinals in Week 5 and then in Week 17 against the Houston Texans. And for him to be a little bit inexperienced, a little bit green, him needing to work on a couple of things. I always say this, it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, right? Because Trey Lance, when he was drafted, he was only 20 years old coming out of North Dakota State. Because of that COVID-shortened season, he only played 1 game back in 2020. The season before that, though, his full lone season as a starting quarterback at North Dakota State, he was fabulous. 30 touchdowns, 1 interception, a bazooka, and a cannon for an arm, a guy who can really complete any throw on the football field at all 3 levels, in between the hashes, outside of the numbers. The vertical element to his game is something that I think is going to make this Niners offense even more dangerous here in 2022, because he gives you a skill set that Jimmy Garoppolo simply does not, from an arm talent standpoint, because he can make any throw on the field at all 3 levels, both up and down the field and then sideline to sideline, but also as a runner and as an athlete. Think about it from an opposing defensive coordinator's perspective. When you have to go up against Jimmy Garoppolo, you kind of know what you're getting. Garoppolo is going to run the offense. He's going to play point guard. He's going to complete a lot of his passes in between the numbers and in the hashes, and he's not really going to offer a long ball threat. He's also not going to offer a running threat either. And all of that is what Lance is able to bring to the table. And that's why the 49ers moved up to number 3 to take him in the 2021 NFL draft, because they realized that in today's NFL, with the way that the game is moving, with the skill set that he possesses, this guy has special ability. This guy has a bunch of talent, and this guy can be a game breaker in this league. So, you know, for the people who are just saying all of these ridiculous things about Trey Lance, they're not in the building. And we just went through multiple quotes from players, and coaches have said the same thing, and the sentiment remains from coaches, the same that it is the players, that Trey Lance has worlds of upside. This guy can be a very, very special talent in the National Football League. What does he need? He needs reps. He needs experience. He needs to go through a complete offseason program training, which is what he's been able to do. He needs to go through OTAs. He needs to go through training camp and get every single rep with the starters to really maximize his ability, but also to grasp Kyle Shanahan's offense, which is a very complex scheme. And I think once he's able to do that, we're going to be able to see Trey Lance and his full-bodied skill set really come to fruition, where I think that this guy can be an absolutely special talent in this league and take over games and give Kyle Shanahan a threat at the quarterback position that simply he's never had as the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Because you look at the quarterbacks who he has coached, by the way, to a lot of success, by the way, Jimmy Garoppolo, CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins. And when you turn on the tape, none of those guys have the wow factor that Lance is able to bring to the table. And that's why I'm high on this kid, because from a quarterback evaluation standpoint, you look at some of the top tier quarterbacks in this league right now, especially going into 2022. From a stupid talent perspective, it's Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Well, we just read off a couple of quotes from players from the Niners who compared Trey Lance to a Josh Allen. He has a Patrick Mahomes-like arm. He offers an athletic component with the running ability of a Patrick Mahomes as well. Now, he doesn't have legs and he doesn't have breakaway speed similar to a Lamar Jackson, but that lone season as a starting quarterback at North Dakota State, I mean, my man ran for almost 1,000 yards and a bunch of touchdowns on the ground, and he did offer an explosive element on the ground. And I go back to that point that I was talking about with opposing defensive coordinators. You're trying to plan against Trey Lance with Kyle Shanahan as the offensive mastermind that he is, and the offensive acumen that he brings to the table, especially with what he was able to do with this offense after they started slow and sluggish in 2021. Getting off to that 3-5 start, they ended the year on a really torrid pace. And again, that's with Jimmy Garoppolo. Can you imagine what he's able to do with Trey Lance and everything that he is able to offer this offense and the diversification of Kyle Shanahan's outside zone scheme, where opposing defenses don't know if he's going to pull it down and run it, if he's going to hand it off to Elijah Mitchell, Trey Sermon, Ty Davis-Price, Jeff Wilson, JaMychal Hasty, if he's going to, pull a quick trigger pass into the flat to a Brandon Ayuk, a Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. And then once you get that ground game going, off the play action, we actually saw Trey Lance in those two starts be very successful with the play action game, uncorking a couple of really nice balls downfield, most notably that long touchdown to Deebo Samuel in Week 17. The play action aspect of the Niners offense here this upcoming season, I think could be one of the more play action run offenses in the NFL, once again, because of the running threat and the passing threat of both Lance, but the offense as a whole, and then all of the weapons at the disposal of Kyle Shanahan and Trey Lance. Now, if there's one concern that I do have this upcoming season when it comes to Trey, it has to be the offensive line. Outside of Trent Williams, there are question marks all across the board. Laken Tomlinson signs that free agent deal with the New York Jets. Is Alex Mack going to retire, or is he going to come back and be the starting center once again? Who's going to start at right guard? Is it going to be Daniel Brunskill, who was certainly up and down last year outside of a couple of starts against Aaron Donald, and he's owned Aaron Donald throughout his career, which is hilarious to a certain degree because Brunskill is a journeyman and Aaron Donald is one of the best defensive players ever. Who's going to start at right tackle? Those there are certainly concerns, but we talk about the weapons offensively, and we talk about this Niners defense, which I actually think is better than it was last year because it's a little bit deeper along the defensive line. One of the best linebacking cores in the NFL with Fred Warner, Azeez Al-Shire, as well as Dre Greenlaw. And the secondary is also excellent, and I think it's much improved because you have a number one corner now in Charvarius Ward. Emmanuel Mosley didn't give up a touchdown in coverage last year. You could have a Diamador Lenore in the slot. Ambry Thomas, the last month of the year as a rookie, vastly improved and ended up making some really game-breaking plays and had a knack for making plays on the football, which I thought was really, really impressive. And then at that safety spot, opposite of Jimmy Ward, you're not sure who's going to be that other starting safety, but Ward last year was excellent. And I like the depth all across the board in this 49ers defense. And D'Amico Ryans is coming back after being a rookie defensive coordinator last year when after that 3-5 start. San Francisco, statistically, was one of the best defenses in the league. So the surrounding cast for Lance, while he might have some hiccups, and I expect those hiccups to certainly, come to light because he is a little bit inexperienced, there's not going to be a ton of pressure on him because there are other really good players on this team that he's going to be able to lean on. And I actually think the defense is going to be able to pace the Niners throughout much of the year to really help him kind of learn the road as a starting quarterback. So before we hop on out of here on this segment, if you're watching here on YouTube, if you believe in Trey Lance, show me that you believe in the former number 3 overall pick by hitting that thumbs up icon and liking the video. Why I also like Trey, in addition to the skill set that we talk about, I like his character. And I like that he has the want to be a very good player. Matt Mayoko saying that Trey Lance requested and received the phone numbers of each of the 49ers' 9 draft picks in the 2022 NFL Draft. That's awesome. Then he fired off text messages to welcome each of the rookies to the team. That's great as well. And while the Garoppolo situation remains completely unsettled, Trey Lance has taken the necessary steps to show his teammates that, hey, I'm the guy, I'm the face of the franchise, and I'm going to carry myself as such. Talking about a 22-year-old who's reaching out to all of these draft picks, who's displaying leadership qualities in addition to some of the unique attributes that he brings to the field from an athletic standpoint, that right there is awesome.